Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the regular business meeting of the Loveland Board of Education. We are here in the Loveland Middle School Intermediate School Library. We are here in person. We have one board member here remotely. Mrs. Washburn is here on the Zoom meeting with us remotely. We have several administrators here with us, Mr. Hall and Mr. Nevin as usual, and then we have Mr. Ogden, Mr. Ames, and Mrs. Connor. We also have Mr. Broadwater, our incoming superintendent, and we have Mr. Giuffre, former treasurer, in the back of the room there. We have Meredith DeWitt, who will be introduced in the program later, and then we have a special guest who will also be recognized in the program in a little bit. So I would like to, I've called us to order. I'd like to ask Mr. Hawley for a roll call.
Mr. Doherty?
Here.
Dr. Lorenz?
Here.
Ms. Pettit?
Here.
Dr. Swetchner?
Here.
Mrs. Washburn?
Here,
She said
remotely.
Here, saying here. Couldn't hear her saying here. It would then be appropriate for a motion to adopt the agenda for this meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved and Ms. Pettit seconded. Any discussion? The agenda is on board docs, including all the documentation that is available there. And I believe it is as was published. I don't believe we've made any last minute changes to it.
There was an addition in my section.
Pardon?
There is an addition in my section that's not
From when it was first published, but it's been added.
correct.
Since, correct. So it is
Yes.
correct online now.
Correct. It's just not what you have in front of you. It does not
A
include it.
couple of items that were added to the treasurer's item. All right. Any questions or discussion about the agenda? All right, then, Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchner?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes,
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Motion carried. Are you able to hear Mrs. Washburn all right?
I'm not.
Okay, is it because you'll have to,
Just unmute here. I think that
you guys can't hear me?
or shall we wait until she's ready to talk? Yes, you can do that, certainly.
Eileen, we've had a little technical problem here hearing you, so I'm going to press a button and hopefully we can hear you now. Would you just say something so we
Yeah,
can
hold
make
on.
sure?
I can,
Okay,
can you
stand by.
hear me?
That's not doing it yet.
can you,
You're too far away, Eileen, we're not hearing you. You have to yell. Get a megaphone.
Eileen, would you try it one more time?
can you hear me now? Hello, hello?
She can be headphones, so I believe she's being heard for the Zoom meeting that's being broadcast. We just may need to be careful when she's ready to participate and to vote, those kinds of things. We'll work on it, Eileen.
Okay, let me know if I need to change something on my end.
All right. Once again, I'd like to welcome our guests here. I'd like to welcome our guests online, and I'd invite you all to stand and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I do not see that we have anybody who signed in for hearing of the public. All right, then we'll move to, we do actually have a public person to be heard from. I had heard from Meredith DeWitt, yeah, up here at the computer, who had asked, had told me that she is the incoming Loveland Athletic Boosters president and asked to let her know how she could work with the board and with the district. So I invited her here to introduce herself.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. I'm Meredith DeWitt. I've had 2 kids go through the district. I have a sophomore in college daughter. I have a son that just graduated and an incoming 7th grader. So why not do this? So our new board, I'm just voted in as president. We got Matt Kapsakavich, who is our first VP. Natasha Biggle is our second VP. We have Stacy Lund as our secretary and Tori Morrison as our treasurer. And that's it. I just want to be able to work with you guys and see what we can't get done. So Kathy and I had a great meeting, and she told me to come and at least introduce myself to you guys.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Welcome, Meredith. One of the things that Meredith told me was she was hoping to get a little more participation, a little more interest, or a little more emphasis at the middle school level.
Correct.
To, make sure that we do the things we need to do at the high school, but also kind of get those folks.
Right.
On board
I
as
feel
well.
like those are the ones that they're excited, they're ready to, get involved with athletics, and why not grab them while they have that excitement? Anybody have any questions?
Well, thanks so much for coming, and definitely let us know how we can collaborate to make your job easier. Thanks for spending all the time doing that.
And I'll tell you that I don't even really know much of what my job is. I don't have a binder or anything to go by, so please bear with us as we're trying to figure it all out.
Great.
You can make it your own job.
That's right.
I can,
Right.
right. Right. Well, thank
Were there not?
Eileen, is it just Kathy or was it me too?
That would be it. Right.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Andrea, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Yes? All right. My apologies to anyone who is watching the video. If you can hear me now and you couldn't hear me before, we've worked on that. You did not hear my presentation to our valedictorian. It was wonderful. She was wonderful. I think we're changing microphones. Now you can hear me? No. Yes?
Okay, we got red light.
Okay. I thought red lights were bad. I thought green lights were good and red lights were bad. So,
Oh, can you hear
Okay.
me? Yes.
again, my apologies to our audience who are far away. What we have done so far, I believe you've been able to hear that we had the Pledge of Allegiance, that we had Meredith DeWitt from the Loveland Athletic Boosters present herself, and then we had recognition of the Loveland High School valedictorian, Joanna Reese. So now we'll move into Mr. Ogden. Are we going to do recognition of retirees? Okay, so I believe we're doing some slides. We are planning to recognize our retirees in the fall in person, but we have right now a slide presentation of those who are retiring. So Mr. Ogden, will you be sharing your screen? Is that how we're doing this?
No, I wasn't technically going to share my screen. They're up there for public consumption, so people have the ability to see our retirees, because one of the things we discussed as an executive leadership team was that celebration is hopefully going to happen. Well, it's planned to happen, I believe, August 10th, and that will be the traditional celebration of our retirees, which we will be able to bring them here and honor them like we traditionally have. I have the slideshow. It is posted on board docs for people to look, for people to view, because it is really the tale of 2 years. It is people that retired last school year, 1920. We had a number of retirees really leading up to this school year, to be quite honest, because of COVID and if our staff could. And then we had a number of retirees in the middle of the year. So we are going to bring everybody in on August 10th. Mr. Collier is well onboarded and up to speed on that. So the list is out there. It is attached to board docs for if people want to go in and look at our retirees over the last 18 to 24 months. And then the Human Resources Department will do a proper celebration with the board and with building administration on August 10th.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? We'll all take time after the meeting to look at that, and we'll be looking forward to that celebration in the fall. Thank you, Mr. Ogden. I believe then we move on to presentations, and this is a presentation from Meter Investment Management. And is it going to be a screen sharing?
Yes, so we actually have a representative from Meter, Nick Vicari. And,
Hello, everyone.
hi,
Can
Nick.
everyone hear me okay?
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Hi, Kevin. Good to see you again. Hello, everyone. And I do have some slides here I'm happy to talk through today. I thought that might be a good overview for everyone. I've met with Kevin and Kevin before here and picked out a few of the slides from what we discussed that I thought might be beneficial for the group.
Nick, we're going to ask you to start over in just a moment. We're trying to get the volume up here. If you could bear with us 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Nick, if you don't mind starting over with your presentation, we would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Is now okay? Everyone, volume good? Perfect. Well, great. Thank you for the introduction there. Understand technical difficulties in the world we're in. Hopefully we can do one of these in person here shortly. Again, Nick Vicari with Meter Investment Management. I figured today might be a good idea to give the group a high-level overview on the firm of Meter, tell you a little bit more about what we do, who we work with, and the solutions we propose to districts across the state of Ohio. And just as a quick recap, this is an additional conversation that I've had with both Kevin and Kevin prior to this. So gentlemen, this might be a little repetitive to you. And if there's any place that you would like me to elaborate a little bit more, feel free to stop me. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Bear with me 1 second. Oh, host disabled. Could the host please give me screen sharing authority, please? If at all possible.
Stand by.
And I'm happy I can email these over real quick to somebody if that would be helpful. If sharing would be too difficult, happy to work around that.
Nick, could you try again?
Yep. Yeah, it still says host disabled participant screen sharing.
We're going to take this moment to thank Mr. Doherty for being the tech person for our meetings.
Sure, of tonight, I want that honor. Nick, it's not giving me the option to do that for you. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Can you just send it to us? And
Sure.
we'll take care of it from here.
Yeah, bear with me one second. Who would you like? Do you want me to send it to Kevin?
Why don't you send it to Kevin? Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Nick, you have sent it to Kevin?
I did. Yes, sorry. Just sent it over to Kevin. It's making its way down. I did just refresh it. It looks like it did go through.
Nick, could you try screen sharing one more time?
Absolutely. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Perfect. Everybody see my screen okay?
We can now.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go in the presenter mode here. Okay, perfect. We're going to get started. And again, feel free to stop me at any point in time, but wanted to just give an overview quickly here of Meter and who we are. So Meter Investment Management, the parent company to Meter Public Funds, opened its doors in 1974. So been in the investment world for over 30 years. Meter Public Funds is the registered investment advisor that I represent today that was established in 1990. And our focus is in the long-term big picture planning around cash flows and customized solutions for public entities, again, across the country and in the state of Ohio. My role is I act as a relationship manager or advisor to our districts that we work with at the firm. And from the firm level, and it would be my responsibility for the day-to-day relationship management with Loveland Schools. And we'll talk about a little bit more about others I work with within the area and familiar with the district. Firm level, we have over $16 billion under assets under management as of 12/31, making us the largest public funds advisor in the state of Ohio. Many clients that range from counties, cities, schools, you name it, in between we work with, including the state of Ohio. We have been an advisor to them dating back to the early 2000s. And getting into our team, I like to think that I'm maybe the most important at the company, but we do have a team of over 100 individuals at the firm level with plenty of professional designations at our clients' disposals. And this is really important. That makes us a little bit more unique, is that we do operate under this team approach when it comes to investing for our clients. And we like our clients to look at us as extensions of their staffs. And so when there are any questions related to accounting or just strategy or legal around that, we have a team that can help and simplify that process for the entities that we work with. So getting into just some schools that we work with across the state here. In addition to this list, I won't go through all of these, but just point out a few that actually are not even on the list that maybe resonate with some of you. Sims Township actually is a client of ours that we work with, which I know a lot of this, maybe some of these conversations stem from the relationship we built with them over the past couple of years. In addition to that, working with Hamilton County, Clermont County, and Warren County as well. So heavily involved in the school space, working with over 90 school districts in the state, but in addition to that, other governments as well from border to border here across the state of Ohio. So with that being said, when we dive into a portfolio, first and foremost, there's a part of planning that goes into this and determining what that right-sized investment portfolio for a specific entity should look like. And it's always important when we work with our school district clients to look at their 5-year forecast as high-level jumping off points. Now, knowing that we have these 5-year forecasts that come out twice a year, we want to most certainly make sure that we're at least having conversations around this at these points in time, because these ultimately do determine our strategy for how we're investing for clients. And it's looking and determining from ultimately, these are good jumping off points to have these discussions. And we know that these 5-year forecasts can change, and therefore the strategy and the amount that we have invested at all points in time should change as well and adapt to these cash flow uncertainties that could be in the forecast into the future. And with this being said, I know we're approaching here 2022, and balances are in a stable position here over the next couple of fiscal years. And again, school funding, we always know that this can change. And it's very important to be able to adapt and be flexible with our strategy based upon cash flows. With following Ohio Revised Code, safety being our number one pillar. And we'll talk about the safe securities that we're looking at that state law permits us to utilize. But liquidity is that second tenet, and just as important as safety. And so we always want to make sure we're doing our planning when it comes to investing. And so that makes us a little bit more different from other advisors in this space, is that we are very much going to be in the weeds when it comes to your cash flows, and always coming up with recommendations on not only the amount to invest, but how far you should be investing. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And based upon, obviously, we know we're going into fiscal year 2022 here in a couple of days, but ultimately what we always recommend is from our low points, carving out 80% when cash flows are stable in this trajectory to carve out as a core investment portfolio. So with that being said, before I turn to the page here, I'll stop. I know I went through cash flows and a little bit of background on Meter. Any questions from the group or anything that we'd like me to elaborate on to this point?
Looks like you're good.
Nope. Okay. Great. So getting into a portfolio sample, and we'll spend the majority of the rest of our time here talking through what a proposed solution ultimately would look like for the district. And so, this is looking, first and foremost, we'll look at the sample portfolio amount. And again, this was just based upon the operating funds that were from the projected forecast and what we would recommend to invest. So based upon the cash flows, we would recommend placing $10 million into what we'd call our core investment portfolio, with 3.5 million roughly in cash at all points in time. And this is important to note that this portfolio recommendation, it's just that, it's a recommendation from the number standpoint. Now, if the district's 5-year forecast was looking in a different light as we went out to the next 2 fiscal years, the recommendation would be a little different. And in addition to that, if the district's cash flows were even negative out in years 4 and 5, the recommendation to the portfolio would look a little different too. So it's important that our portfolios have this tactical approach where we're able to shift and adjust based upon our cash flows, but most certainly the economic environment that we're currently in. We'll look to the right-hand side here to the sample asset allocation. And so I won't go through all of these in greater detail unless there are some direct questions here. But ultimately, Ohio Revised Code, what we follow, Ohio Revised Code 135.14, and I've been working with him. He was kind enough to send over the district's forecast, which you guys do fall in line with state code, and there would need to be no amendments to your investment policy, which ultimately governs how we can invest for the district. But ultimately, that investment policy also states the different asset classes that we can utilize. And so as your advisor, it's our job to find what securities and asset classes make the most sense in different interest rate environments and across different maturity buckets. And so based upon a portfolio, if we are going into the market, there would be a lean across these 4 different asset classes in the marketplace. And it's important to note that 2 of these on here require additional training. So the municipal securities and commercial paper, those asset classes do carry additional education requirements, which Kevin currently does have. In the event that Kevin moves on, there's a new treasurer that comes in place. That new individual would be required to take these trainings if they wanted to utilize those asset classes. So with that being said, a $10 million portfolio would be laid out in a similar manner as you're seeing below under this maturity distribution. And this is done very strategically in the sense that we most certainly want to position this with cash flows for the district, knowing that we're not negative out 5 years currently from the forecast. So we still believe it's advantageous to take a portion of our portfolio out across the yield curve, because that is where we're seeing pickup across the yield curve out in years 3, 4, and 5, cash flows permitting. But also you can see here that in addition to that 3.5 million that we have in cash that we recommend keeping liquid, we're also going to have $2.5 million that's going to be maturing in the next 12 months. So ample liquidity built into these portfolios. And again, this is done for cash flow purposes, but also gives us flexibility that when interest rates do move, we can most certainly adjust the portfolio to take advantage of those interest rates at those points in time. With that said, I'll go and stop here for any questions.
Nick, just for maybe a little bit of clarification, I see some pluses and minuses here. On the plus side, these investment classes are about as safe as you can get. I mean, essentially, it's on peer with the federal government. So that's a good thing. It's safe, and by law, it has to be safe. On the somewhat downside, if as individual investors, we're used to seeing, on average 6% over the long term, and in some years, multiples of that, it's not likely for us to expect to see anything near that here. We'll be substantially lower as a rate of return because of the security of these classes, correct?
Yes, and Kevin, I'm sorry, we were kind of cutting out there. I apologize, but I think you were talking about the expectation on return in the portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. Just saying on one hand, these types of investments are extremely secure because they're on par with the federal government, and they have to be by law. We're limited to only certain types of investments. But the downside of that is that the yield on them is considerably less than what one might expect as a private investor.
Yep. And Kevin, I'm so sorry. I'm getting a big lag. I can't hear. I'm wondering if it's just a connection issue. If it's okay, I would like to stop sharing my screen. I can go back to it, but I'm happy to talk through it. Maybe that might help. Give me 1 second here.
Nick, is that any better?
A little better. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Perfect.
I'll just ask this one last time, and then we can move on, and you
Sure.
can complete your presentation. But again, just for clarity, the asset classes, the types of investments that we must invest in based on state law are extremely conservative, therefore safe and as low a risk as you can get. The downside to that is that the yield on these investments is likely to be significantly lower than what we as any individual investor might be accustomed to seeing. Can you just confirm that and maybe comment on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So these securities are either carrying implicit or explicit backing of the federal government, are carrying FDIC insurance, or they are very high credit quality. Therefore, obviously not taking a significant risk. It levels your interest income or return that you can expect to make on on a portfolio like this. So for instance, if we were to invest a portfolio in a similar nature, this portfolio would come in at roughly 45 to 50 basis points. So 0.45 to 0.50%. So roughly generating $45,000 to $50,000 of annualized interest income. Comparing it to the alternative, which is Star Ohio, which very safe. It's a liquid program, AAA rated funds, good for short-term cash purposes. That's 8 basis points, so 0.08. So again, on 10 million, roughly $8,000. So you can do the difference between the two. But again, by not we're not going out in Bitcoin or equities or anything of that nature. Very, very safe from that side of things.
And then maybe one other plus is once we have this set up, we've kind of done the mechanics to respond to changes in the yield curve. And if we find ourselves in a higher return environment, it's a relatively straightforward process to start to move some of these investments around, correct?
That's very correct. Absolutely. So the interest rate environment, we hope at some point with the Fed coming out with the most recent comments, with some pointing to interest rates, them raising interest rates here in 2023, that ultimately does affect our strategy. And by being in the market and having a plan in place, we would then be able to adjust and move with interest rates at that point in time. And it's very important to note that we're very much going to be in tandem with the treasurer and having these conversations, keeping them up to speed, what's going on in the market, educating them, talking through cash flows, and being their eyes and ears in the market to what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think it's maybe helpful to point out that if we were looking at the yield curve that was in effect in just 2 years ago, 19 or so, it'd be significantly better than the environment that we find ourselves in at the moment. And one could imagine that a time like that will cycle back through, and we could potentially be looking at a much higher interest income for the district than what we're talking about at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very fair point. You look at some of your other peers that we mentioned earlier, their portfolios are, in the upper, closer to 1%, lower 80s, 80s, 90s range right now because they've been in the program and in the market for some time. So again, it's dipping into this, establishing a strategy, having a plan, so then we're able to adjust and move with interest rates.
And just again, for perspective, what we see in some of our neighbors are rates of return that are multiples of what we're projecting right now, just because of the point in time that we're entering the market. But we're not precluded, as the market's very cyclical, from rejoining at a higher yield point.
Yes, that's fair to say. Yep.
I have one quick question. You mentioned training that a treasurer might need to be able to work with some of these investments. I imagine that, we're considering entering into this agreement this evening at the board, and we have Mr. Hawley with us for another month. Possible that we'll have an interim treasurer for a month, maybe longer, as we look for a new treasurer. Do you foresee any issues with that changeover?
No, ma'am. I wouldn't. Depending on who the interim treasurer might be, they might have experience with this, and they could have this training already. In the event that the beauty of what we do is everything is customized. So in the event that those asset classes we decide, hey, we don't want to utilize for the time being until someone comes in and they get comfortable, we can most certainly exclude those as well too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nick, you can proceed.
Perfect. No, this was actually the end of the presentation here. I don't want to go into too much of the weed with my 10 minutes. I most certainly want to keep it open to questions here, with this being a little newer. I can't share that Meter has had a relationship with the district in the past, some years ago. So we're not unfamiliar with the district by any means. So we'd love the opportunity to work with the district now and into the future, being your partner.
Do any other board members or Brad or Kevin have anything else that you want to bring out at this point?
I just have one quick question, and Nick, I think you can answer this as well. What we're approving tonight is entering a relationship with Meter, and we plan to obviously follow your advice, but flesh out what exactly this looks like and the duration of the timing of the investments, which is not what we're approving tonight.
Yes, sir. That's from my understanding. It would be approving Meter to be a partner with the schools tonight, and then working with your treasurer to determine the overall strategy. That would be a one-off from here.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions from anybody? Okay, Nick, I think with that, we appreciate your presentation and your comments, the information tonight, and we'll bring this one to a close and turn it back to Kathy. And Kevin Hawley, thank you for bringing Nick to us and the opportunity that this presents for the district. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
And I just want to add one more thing, which is thank you for Kevin and Kevin for spending all the time looking for ways to get additional income on our cash reserves.
We find ourselves at this kind of unique point of having some cash in the bank, so to speak, and it's a terrible thing to just have it sit there, not earning income for the district. So it's a nice opportunity, and we should, personal opinion, we should capitalize on it, so to speak.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Can you guys hear me?
I believe the next item on the agenda shows as administrator reports. Those are in board docs. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Washburn.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to ask how Meter makes money off
Eileen,
of this.
we have to turn a speaker on, Stan. If you could just start over, we can hear you now.
Okay, I was just curious how Meter makes money off of this. Like, what is our financial responsibility to them?
Let's maybe turn it to Kevin Hawley and allow him to answer that.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's an administrative fee. The fee does not necessarily change. It's 10 basis points. So if you're familiar with investments, so when Nick's talking about basis points, not everybody's familiar with what that actually means. So 10 basis points is 0.10%.
So Eileen, they get a percentage of our asset value on an annualized basis. It's basically 0.1% of the asset value. That's how they make the primary fee.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe I could confirm at this point that the agreement is it in administrative content on board docs? Once it would be approved as a resolution by the board, it would then be available?
So we'll make the meter one specifically. There is another one that has some information attached to it that might be of security purposes. We would keep it behind the scenes, but yes.
All right, so that will come up when we come up with the item on the agenda. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Connor. We'll get you to put your headset back on, and then we'll stop echoing around the room.
Andrea, I hate to ask you to do this, but when somebody in the room is talking, you could mute, you hit the mute button, and that will stop that feedback. And then only when we have somebody outside the room, that's the trick to that. Thank you for your help on that.
All right. Thank you for your help on all the technical. So we have a tag team going here with technical issues. Okay, so as I mentioned, the administrator reports are available on board docs. Those are for board member perusal to have the background needed for items that come up on the agenda. The only thing that I would note on those administrator reports, I think there was a mention of a document that was going to be added, a picture that was going to be added to Mr. Ames' report that I'm not sure was there. There were pictures referenced in your report, Mr. Ames.
In those, the pictures or the pictures were all part of last month's report, and I failed to put them back on, but if you would like to view them, go to last month's.
Okay, so they're in last month's report when you first reported this to us. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make that clear so people knew where those diagrams or representations were. Thank you. So I think we'll move on to the board president report. If there are questions or concerns with administrator reports, they may come up when we have particular items that we're dealing with, but otherwise we'll move on to my report. I think I have a fairly brief report this evening, and then I'll check to see if there are other board members who have reports that they would like to make. In my report, I would like to, and let me make sure I'm being heard, correct? People are hearing me? Mr. Ogden, are you hearing me? Okay, thank you. First of all, the legislation that just passed last evening, I believe in the Ohio House and Senate, which will go to the governor, and it's concerning the budget. It had originally included language to allow virtual meetings of school boards to continue. That language was not included. So it is my understanding that as of June 30th, school boards can no longer hold virtual meetings. That does not mean that we will not have Zoom meetings, that we will not stream meetings, that we will not tape and broadcast meetings. What it means is that board members can only participate in person. So in the case of some sort of unusual case, a board member could listen on a conference call or could listen on a Zoom meeting that we were having, but a board member is only able to participate, discuss, deliberate, and vote if they are in person. So that starts as of after June 30th. I think that the reason I bring that up particularly is to make sure board members know they need to be here, but also to remind us that we need to talk a little bit about how we are going to continue to broadcast our meetings, tape our meetings, et cetera. We have been looking into, as you can see this evening, we are a little bit clunky with some of the things that we have to do with Zoom that may be changed if we have presentations made in person here in the room, but the question still remains how we would tape these meetings, how we would broadcast these meetings. We did look into one final last-ditch effort, I think, to get involved with ICRC that would broadcast meetings, but the only contact that we had was Sims Township, and I believe that Mr. Nevin found out that Sims Township no longer has a relationship with ICRC, so we have no connection that can get us into ICRC, so we will need to continue to discuss. Again, no sense that we're going to stop broadcasting, stop streaming, stop having meetings that are available to the public, just a sense that the board needs to consider how this will work, because Mr. Doherty does not need to be our tech person every night. We cannot rely on some of the tech situations that we have here in the school, because those folks are needed for the school district needs. So we have to figure out how we're going to proceed going forward with this.
So a suggestion, maybe a request. I've been close to this for some time, and what I would like to do, if everybody on the board supports the idea, is to represent the board in discussions with the district to bring back a recommendation on how we should proceed on this particular subject. But I need to be able to operate with your endorsement.
Can you see us all nodding our heads?
Let me see.
Do you need a resolution to that effect?
Brad and Mike, what do you think? Do we need a resolution, or you okay with just the discussion here for now?
Typically what we say is any time a board member is serving in that kind of capacity.
You're muted.
The standard is that any time a board member is serving in that kind of capacity, there is a resolution to assign that board member. The way I describe it, it's as if you're hiring that person to engage in this work. With something like this, I don't know that that's necessary. I think if it's a consensus amongst the board, this is a committee where obviously Mr. Doherty has some interest here, and he'd be working with our team, including Mr. Ames and our tech team, to start to take a look at solutions. He may be able to bring us some insights as a board member that obviously are going to be welcome, from your perspective. So,
I think that it should go without saying, but let's say it. That I'm not in a position to authorize expenditures. Anything that would cost money would either have to be decided on independently by those that have already the ability to make a call within the district, or bring it back to the board for an approval. So it'd just be developing the options, trying to figure out the best way forward, and representing the board and trying to solve that particular problem.
Anybody else volunteering? Want to get in front of the line, in front of Mr. Doherty?
There's plenty of room right here.
I would say then that you have consensus and that you would let us know if you do need a board resolution, since this is not exactly district technology.
Right.
It is in fact a necessity of the board
Right.
concerning these meetings. If you get into a position where you do need a resolution from the board to give you the authority to work with some company or become a representative, we can certainly put that on the
Right.
agenda.
I'm sure we'll be entirely collaborative on this, and we'll just figure it out. Eileen, I wasn't watching to see if you were in agreement. Are you okay? Okay, very good. Should thumbs up there. All right, very good. We'll work it out.
All right, we will need to talk a little bit about, since we're talking about meetings, we'll need to talk a little bit about meetings. I think that may come up when we talk about treasurer search. Right now, we don't have any July meetings scheduled. Our next meetings are scheduled for August 10th and August 31st. So we will need to talk about any other meetings that we might need to schedule relative to a treasurer search. I will let you know that, as you know, since you receive all of the emails that come to the board, we did not have any communication requesting that an email be read for hearing of the public this evening. Since our last meeting, we have had a couple of communications regarding the treasurer search, some comments regarding the community advisory group, regarding the search in general. And then we've had probably a half a dozen communications concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion, and critical race theory, input being given to the board. But those are the communications we've had, none that asked to speak before the board. I will let you know before I turn it over to other board members that I did do some research on behalf of the board concerning an interim treasurer. It looks like the way the search is going, this board would need to consider hiring an interim treasurer, at least for a certain amount of time. So I did some research as far as an OSBA list of possible interim superintendents, an OASBO list of possible superintendents. And I have provided some information to the board that the board may be willing to consider an executive session as far as appointing an employee of the board. And that item would then come onto the agenda after executive session if the board decides to do that. So I believe that's my report. You heard me earlier say I was able to attend graduation, which was great. Let's see, what else did I do? I did go down to the Loveland Farmers Market. Mr. Broadwater was there last week, meeting people, handing out balloons again. So we keep a presence in the community, and we do try to keep talking about how we're going to communicate, how we're going to be out there in the district. So I will ask, I think maybe I'll ask Mrs. Washburn first if she has a report regarding the treasurer search, and also any report, maybe she and Dr. Swetchenow might have a report on student representatives, but I don't know if there's a report on that yet.
Yeah, can you guys hear me or not yet? Okay, I'm gonna flip it and start with the student representative report, because then I think that Brad might be able to help some with the treasurer search report. We do have our interviews lined up for our student representatives lined up on Thursday afternoon, and Eric and I are doing those via Zoom with our candidates. We have 2 that are confirmed at this point and some others that are in the works, and we're just waiting to hear back. But Julie was kind enough to get those set up for us. So we are rolling on that. As far as the treasurer search, we are working on our meeting date. I just sent a follow-up email as we were talking to ask the Bobs when our next focus group meeting is. And then also, Brad, do you want to talk about the CAG group and where we are in that process?
Sure, I'll talk about the CAG, and we do have Bob Summers in ready to come into the meeting, so I can talk.
Oh, okay, cool.
If you can admit him, and I'll just give an update on the CAG. We sent out 14 invitations to potential CAG members. We have received back 6 confirmations. We'll continue to work on this, and talking with Bob and Bob, we kind of agreed on an optimum amount of somewhere between 8 and 10. We can certainly do this with 6. We do have one member of the potential list who is a council member, but apparently has moved out of the district. My belief is that he could bring some good perspective to the group, but if you would rather not have that person involved, he understands that as well. That's Mr. Butler, Mr. Tim Butler. So I think that's for the board to decide. Again, I think he brings a good perspective in what it takes to hire your treasurer. So wherever you are with that, we'll continue to work on this list. What happened was we had a lot of submissions from a lot of people. We tried to narrow it down to be represented by different board members and by community members that made recommendations. So now we can go back to their list and add some or your list, add some that maybe didn't make the first cut simply because we were just spreading it out to be fair. But I do think we have a good representation in the community, and you should have the list in board docs to take a look at.
Bob Summers is now with us.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that we have a pretty
Bob,
good
anything to add?
representation of the community at this point as well.
Eileen, we're not hearing you very well. I think it's a bandwidth issue. Can you try again?
She's frozen.
You're frozen right now.
Well, the network maybe catches up with her.
Bob Summers, can you hear us?
Yes. I can hear you.
Okay. We're waiting for Eileen's connection to improve here.
Yeah, saw
Maybe
that.
you want to go ahead and make whatever comments you were about to make there a moment ago.
So go ahead. Okay. Yeah, not much to cover unless you have questions. If you want, I can share the task list, but it's kind of a breakdown. We're about to complete the search preparation by blessing the skill sets tonight, and you should be in great shape. Brad's been great to work with on the CAG. We anticipate engaging them sometime early next week or a little bit later. We do have candidates coming in. They're not coming in like the superintendent search was, but they're coming a little bit faster recently. There's been some confusion around treasurers are a pretty tight knit group, right, Kevin? And they pay attention to things. So they have all kinds of questions and that sort of thing, but we anticipate a pretty healthy group of candidates to be on schedule. As you'll recall, there wasn't a lot of the previous work that had to be done with the superintendent search. We used the key information document. We've incorporated the skill sets that you've identified. We've posted the position on the more traditional routes. Plus, we've also done social media, just like we did with your superintendent search. We are in the process, we'll begin the process of reviewing resumes, doing interviews, and assembling key information. As you'll recall, the decision was made to not have a massive review of candidates for the board like you did with the superintendent, but we're gonna try to find 4 high quality candidates that meet your criteria, and then you can interview them. The CAG will interview them. You'll make a decision of whether you find somebody in that group. If you don't, then we'll go to the next 4. As for meetings, you actually do not have any scheduled meetings involved with the treasurer search for the month of July, because that's the period of time that we're working to get all the candidates identified, information pulled together, and that sort of thing. Our schedule tentatively shoots for August 6th as your board interview date. Obviously, that was set into place not knowing exactly when your boards are. So somewhere in that range of August 6th is where your target should be on the board. And with that, I'll stop, and if there's any questions.
I can just add one quick one, which is I'm out of town August 6th. So if the laws have changed, I can observe but not participate in.
I just thought it would be a nice birthday present for me. That's my birthday, to be able to do interviews with treasurers. But
Eric, I'm also out of town on August 6th, and so is Michelle. So I don't think that that's a possible. You'll have to celebrate your birthday on your own.
Yeah, anything in that range is where your target is, preferably after the 6th. If you go to the next week or whenever your regular board meetings are, is quite frankly fine.
Eileen, I think we have you back now, so if you wanted to come in at this point.
As far as dates or?
Well, I know we interrupted you before because the connection was bad, so.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
That's not.
No, it was, I think that Bob just covered it all. The only other thing that I had that I know Kathy wanted to address were the dates. So it's going to have to at the very least be the week after August 6th.
That's right. And again, you're not in any kind of pressure to be at a specific time. So pick the date that works best for you folks, and then we'll work towards that.
So do we have to work out a date?
We do have a work session on August 10th, but since we're coming up on the beginning of school, I'm not sure, with a new superintendent, with possibly an interim treasurer at that point, I'm not sure that we can include all that in the August 10th meeting. I don't know how the board feels, whether they feel comfortable trying to set another meeting that week. August 9th, August 12th. I have a Great Oaks meeting on August 11th. So
Does August 12th work for everybody? Bob, did you hear the question?
Sorry.
Yep.
Do we know how long that you count on this taking? Can we not add it to the regular meeting on the 10th?
So you would expect a maximum of 4 interviews. So it will take you 3 to 4 hours.
So no.
So no. I am available on the 12th.
I am as well. Eileen, are you available on the 12th?
Yes.
I am theoretically available.
Me too. What if we were to go ahead and get that on the calendar, and then if we need to make some changes, we would at least have a date held for the moment. If we need to put it a little later, we're okay.
Is that okay with everybody? Eileen, that's okay, good. Michelle?
What would be the earliest, Dr. Switch, now that you would?
$5:30.
And Michelle? Theoretically?
I can be here earlier. Than 5:30.
Okay, but we can't. Okay, so let's say 5:30, August 12th, as a date that we will try and set, and then we'll have to make some changes if we need to.
Bob, did you catch that? Are you?
Yep, already
Just as an
changed
aside,
in the spreadsheet.
I may not be available.
All right, we will work on that. If we find that we only have 3 board members available for that, then we'll make some changes. Okay.
So we're tentatively planning on Thursday. It was the 12th at
Yes.
5:30 p.m.
And
remind me, Mr. Summers, we would know when, if we have 4 candidates to interview at that point?
yes, you would have information in advance of that. And you also, we build into this particular approach to have the superintendent, admin, treasurer team do interviews as well as the CAG. So you'll have feedback from those 2 separate groups, the community group and the internal group. That was Eileen suggested that we involve those folks in the middle. So that's a slight adjustment over the superintendent search. So both of those inputs will be available to you when you interview the candidates for yourself.
And they would be available by August 6th, by your birthday?
I think that would be a wonderful gift if they were available August 5th. So that's what we're actually shooting for. We're shooting for somewhere around that end of July. The only reason that we're saying we're kind of wishy-washy about it is, it's a difficult period of time for a lot of educators and treasurers in particular. You're closing out the year end, June 30th. You're trying to get the school started, and then you're trying to find some vacation time in there in the middle. And so we're sensitive to some of that vacation lag.
Well, just to make a point, it is the intention of this board. Obviously, we need a treasurer starting August 1st. So it is the intention of the board to consider an interim treasurer. So it's not like we are we want to do this correctly.
That's
and
correct.
So it doesn't have to be done August 12th if we need to move that. That's why I was asking when things might be available. So if we're finding that things are not available that early, then we can move that date later.
So my guess is that it's probably, we're not going to probably run into any problems getting to your 12th, but the big issue is if you meet the first 3 to 4 candidates and none of them fit, we may go back again. And again, the question is not about speed or getting it done efficiently. It's about doing a quality job. So I like your approach to things.
Anything else, Mrs. Washburn? Anything else, other board members?
I don't think so.
Good to see y'all.
Oh,
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
I think I was done with the treasurer. It's something else.
All right, thank you, Mr. Summers.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Pettit.
Eileen, did you finish about the student reps? I think I lost translation there.
Interviews this week.
Thursday, we're doing interviews on Thursday,
Okay.
and they'll be via Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Washburn. Any other board members, any reports for this evening? Dr. Swetchnow, you have anything for the Planning Commission, or are we on hold for that for the moment?
No, I would say that for the Planning Commission, we have continued to reach out to new applicants, and Brad and Andrew just were pushing out through the communications channels available to us to ensure that we've reached the breadth of the people that we can. Obviously, any community members watching this that have any interest or any candidates that they think would be desirable, please reach out to us. And I also have the Planning Commission members working on looking for ways to add breadth to the commission.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Pettit, any report? Mr. Doherty? All right, then if I can find my agenda, we will move on and we'll move to superintendent updates.
Great, thank you so much. I'll start out this evening with some good news about our cross-country trip to Irvine, California. On your agenda is a request for approval for the high school cross-country teams to attend the 40th annual Woodbridge Cross Country Classic, again in Irvine, California. That's Friday, September 17th, that weekend. 400 schools will be participating. We are the only school district from Ohio. 10 boys and 10 girls will be attending. No cost to the school district, and the students will only miss 1 day of school. Provisions are in place if there's an individual family that's not able to sponsor the trip or pay for their child to go. Folks are stepping up to make sure that that's taken care of.
Did you say out of 400
400
schools,
schools.
we are the only one from
Correct.
Ohio?
Only one from the state of Ohio. This is approved by the Ohio High School Athletic Association, and obviously an excellent opportunity for our kids. And anytime our students could travel in such a positive light, we certainly want to take advantage of that if we possibly can. Next item, wanted to give you an update on our conversations about transportation as directed by the board. I'm working closely with Mr. Ames and Mr. Ossie about potential options for expanding our transportation. Where we are now is that obviously, if we were to restore high school transportation, you know, that cost is going to be $500,000 or more, which is a significant amount of money. I'm not suggesting anything one way or another, but obviously that's something you would have to consider in the impacts on the 5-year forecast. We are researching to see if there are other options. What we know right now, as we assumed, is if you transport any high school student, you pretty much have to transport all high school students. So the idea of maybe a neighborhood having a shuttle service, we can't do that as a public school, but we are considering other options. I know that John and Greg are reaching out to the Ohio Department of Education. I'm reaching out to some private companies to see how other school districts across Ohio have addressed this issue. So we'll continue to work on this, continue to be creative. Hopefully, you know, we can help our parents out in some way or another. Any questions on that at all? Okay. Wanted to talk about our staffing situation and just remind you that each summer, certainly in the month of July, as an example, when the board's not meeting, there will be the requirement for either myself or Mr. Broadwater to have to hire employees, likely teachers, because we do have some positions posted. You granted that authority back in January as part of your organizational meeting. So I always like to remind boards of that, because sometimes you say, hey, wait a minute, we've hired somebody we weren't aware. You know, if you think of the model, really the administration kind of does the hiring, you approve the contracts. Well, this gives us the ability to offer that contract to the individual. And I think you all are aware of this, but what I say to folks is, let's say if we had a physics, any other science position, a math position, those are very difficult to fill. So it's one of those, we need to grab that person as soon as we can and get them hired. So just wanted to remind you of that. And that as we go through this hiring process, we've talked about this before, but our overarching goals are worth mentioning again. And our hiring goals are to provide the absolute best employees we can for our students and community, but also to recognize the critical need to operate within the financial constraints that were in place before the COVID-19 epidemic. With that in mind, however, as we look at next year's projections, we anticipate a savings in our current staffing costs of over $600,000 going into next year. I wouldn't be jumping up and down about $600, but I do want to take a moment to recognize Mr. Ogden for this work in his department, and certainly the administrators. Mr. Ogden has put down some hard and fast rules for the administrative team about who they're allowed to hire, what money they can spend, to the point where he's been very direct, and they've said, yeah, but, and he said, no, this is what your budget is for that position. I will tell you that I've had a lot of experience, obviously, in the field, and I don't know anybody who is a better numbers person in the HR side than Mr. Ogden. He's just been an absolute joy to work with. You know, there have been a couple of occasions where when I first came in, obviously I wanted to jump in on negotiations because I've always done that. And then when I talked with him, I realized he's got this, you know, along with his team. When it comes down to the staffing thing, that's one of those things that I wanted to take a look at those numbers. And when he came to me and gave the report, I said, you've got this. So again, it's been a joy to work with him. I think we're in a really good position in the hiring. This is an attractive school district. We have a few positions open, Mr. Ogden, 4 at this point in time. I have every confidence that we'll be able to hire solid people.
Brad, if I could,
Sure.
just to add on and directed to Chuck in particular, I've had a chance to work very closely with him over the last several months in particular. I think, Chuck, you've done an excellent job of managing a very difficult subject. We are very fortunate to have had all the hard work that you've put into it. You've approached it with a great deal of professionalism, amongst the best I've seen. So it's a job very well done, needed to get done, difficult to do, but he did it.
He did. And then finally, in the area of communications, a brief update. As discussed previously, our new website was scheduled to go live on or before July 1st. It is live. And again, I would caution folks and caution the board. It's attractive. It's easier to operate, but it's not very deep at this point in time, meaning that there's a lot of content we have to build, including departments such as the board page and what you want on there. But we had to go live because our contract expired with the other company as of June 30th, and we didn't want dead click space out there. The goal is to have our fully designed site up and running for the start of the school year. Mr. Broadwater and I are meeting with Mr. Doherty, Andrew Setters, Lynn Mangan, and Tara Hamilton from the Planning Commission to talk a little bit about the website, but where I hope to steer the conversation is not about the mechanics and the tools, but the overall communication plan, including the policy from the board and how we operate all together as a team to push out the messages that should be getting pushed out. It's way more complex than just sending out some tweets and text messages and that kind of thing. And it really is about how we communicate to our community based on what they tell us that they want to hear. And as part of that, you know, I think probably in my first interview, I talked about the district and how I felt like there needed to be some significant work in the communications plan. I was not surprised given the cuts, but I was concerned on the fact that we only have a 2-day-a-week or 2.5-day-a-week communications consultant. On the agenda tonight, you'll see that I am recommending renewing our contract with the Hamilton County Educational Service Center, and I'm also recommending expanding that contract to a 5-day offering. This will move Andrew Setters into more of, instead of a consultant, this will be more of a communications director position. He has some significant skills, having worked in the media with WLW, I think Channel 5, other news outlets. You know the old expression, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. The idea of having a newsman in our ranks is absolutely of value to us, because when things get tough, he knows how to say things in the way that's going to put us in the best light out there. So I am making that recommendation. It will be additional costs. What I'm asking the board is that the money that we've saved, if we can put that into that communications director position, it's still significantly less than what you were paying at the time you had the full-time person. So I think that what I've heard out in the community is about communications, talk to us, ask us, please engage us. And I think this is a really good move forward for the board. And obviously, Mr. Broadwater, he and I have talked about this extensively. And I know he's concerned about the vote to make sure it happens. So anyway, I think that's where we are. And then the last thing I would say is just thank you for the opportunity. This will likely be my last meeting. And just to reiterate, it's been wonderful working with you all. But one of the things as I start to transition out of the office and I'm down to just having my backpack to move out and Mike's moving in, I told him, I said, I am so jealous of him because this team has been wonderful to work with. But the team moving forward is another wonderful group of people. I mean, it fell into place. You're a lucky guy. But anyway, I think I feel really good about the team he gets to work with, and obviously feel good about his leadership moving forward. That's what I have, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nevin. I think Mr. Doherty has something he wants to say, but I think I'll say first, we're a little concerned at this meeting that this may be your last meeting, Mr. Ogden's last meeting, Mr. Hawley's last meeting. As much as we want to welcome you, Mr. Broadwater, it's a little bit scary to think that these folks that have helped us through this time, and particularly Mr. Ogden for a year, Mr. Hawley for longer than that, it's a little bit scary to think about you all taking your backpacks and walking out the door. So we want to make sure we say we appreciate what you have been doing with us as well. Mr. Doherty.
Yeah, total agreement with Kathy's comments. A thank you to Andrew. I think he's done a tremendous amount of work, particularly in the last 6 weeks or 4 weeks to bring up the new website. A lot of work, and I think we should all say thank you to him for that and look forward to the meeting tomorrow and other discussions that we'll have about how everything evolves from that point. And on a personal note towards you, Brett, I've enjoyed dozens and dozens of hours that we have sat and talked about the issues here, the issues in the community and elsewhere. It's been very helpful to me. I've learned from you, and I think we're in debt to you. Thank you for having thrown in with us and contributed as much as you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Mrs. Washburn is unmuted. I think she wants to say something. We better get her in here before, I don't know if you know, Eileen, but we're having this terrible thunderstorm outside the window. So we may be out of here really soon.
Wow. I wish I could commiserate and tell you that we were having a terrible thunderstorm too, but the eagle just flew by the window over the lake, and so stay dry there. I just wanted to thank all of our individuals that are leaving our team to move on to different endeavors. To Mr. Ogden, I've worked with you and for you in a variety of ways, and just the different ways that you've changed and grown have been so impressive, and I've been honored to work with you again. And Brad, I hope this isn't goodbye and that you will stay in touch with us, the things that you've done to help us move forward, the connections you've made with the community. It's been inspiring, and I know I've learned a lot from you, and I know the community appreciates you. I know that your wife, though, is very much looking forward to you being home more and enjoying your grandbaby. But thank you very much for your service. It was tremendous. And Kevin, I don't have much to say to you because I'm going to haunt you and make you stay in touch. Everything that you've done, I'm a big Kevin fan. I appreciate you. I appreciate your values and just what you've brought to us. I'm sorry that it wasn't always an easy journey, but I wish you the best of luck moving forward. And I've been honored to work alongside of you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Don't want to say goodbye, so I'm not.
All right, then.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, with all those wonderful things being said, we get to move on to the first reading of policies. Isn't that a letdown? I will just say that this should be very quick this evening. The next item is first reading of policies. You have a list there. What has happened, because the policy committee has not been meeting with change in superintendent, with the way we've been doing things, what you have is a set of policies that are basically Neola templates. The problem with that is that you do not have in that list our Loveland adopted policies. You have Neola templates that have choices and things. So the task would have been to look at all of those policies and then look at our adopted policies and then figure out what was going on. What my intention is for the second reading is to bring them to you in groups. There is a group that is essentially discrimination or anti-discrimination, however you want to say it. Those are basically legal changes, wording changes, changes in people. So those will be relatively easy. Many of them are the same. There are a group of financial policies, the 6,000 and 7,000s. I would like to get some input from the Finance Committee before we get back to adopting these in the second reading, but those will be cleaned up with Loveland policies and any changes that are being recommended by Neola updates. And then there's a small group that are things like the diabetes care, the wellness policy, et cetera. Those are a little more difficult, but still Loveland adopted policies that you will have with the changes highlighted when you get to doing the second reading. The only exception on that list is 0145, filling a board vacancy, which is at the beginning. That has been added simply by experience. Ms. Pettit, Mrs. Washburn, and I interviewed 34 people for board appointments. And so the current policy says that the board shall interview all interested applicants. It would be my suggestion that the board consider changing that to the board may interview interested applicants and shall select candidates based on their qualifications, but that is entirely up to this board. I will just let you know that when we appointed Mr. Doherty and Dr. Swetchenow, again, we had about 3 days, well, maybe we had 5 days, but over 3 days, we interviewed 34 people. Would have been 36, but 2 people dropped out. I don't know that we did justice to those 36 people. So no intention on my part to stop the idea of interviewing, just allowing the board the possibility, if there would be a similar situation with 3 days and 36 applicants, to consider some way to perhaps narrow down the numbers who are interviewed. But again, no intention to not interview, just a thought that the board might want to consider. So those are the issues on the first reading of policies. Please take time to think about them. If there are any that speak to you, I know policy speaks to all of you, but if there are any that are of particular interest to you, take a look at them. You will have, for the second reading, whenever we get another meeting going here, you will have the Loveland policy with the changes outlined ready to go. And if they're not acceptable at the second reading, we can obviously move them along to another reading, another chance to adopt. So that's policies. Anybody else want to be on the policy committee? Mrs. Washburn.
I was going to say I was raising my hand, but not to be on the policy committee.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 things real quick. One, just to piggyback on what you were saying, with the way that the time frame is set up that we have to follow, we do have when there is a board vacancy, there are very few days. It's very limited on the number of days we have to interview somebody to replace those candidates. So I completely agree with what you said. I have looked into some other districts, and I know that at least the people that I've spoken to and the policy that I've looked into, that other districts don't just blanket interview everybody. So that is something other districts do, where they can interview everybody, but they don't. The other comment is, and I asked Dr. Lorenz about this earlier, if somebody can, if you're in the policies, on the first one where it says filling a board vacancy, I tried to put a note up in there as a comment. I thought that would be a helpful tool, and I was just curious if anybody can see it, and it would become public record, which is totally fine, obviously. But I just thought it would be easier to keep track of suggestions or changes for policies, since there are so many of them, if others are able to see it.
I am not able to be in board docs right now and deal with.
Eileen, I'm looking right now, and there's nothing in the policy itself that looks like a note, nor is there anything on that policy page. The line that says administrative content and executive content is blank.
It's my belief.
It's in
once
the
in a while-
annotation section where it says that you can make notes. So I wasn't sure. I think Dr. Lorenz is just about to say, and I'm sorry I cut you off, and she said earlier that it's just notes for yourself. But I was just curious to see if you could
My
see it.
annotation section is blank.
Mine too.
It's been a while
Okay.
since I did board docs training, but I believe that that note section is a note for yourself, so that you can remember that when there's board deliberation, but it only shows up on your board docs page.
All right. Well, that would have been a nice way to share comments on the policies, but
I would imagine that the problem with that is it would be very easy for a board to enter into deliberation if there was a note that you made that other people read, that then they made notes on those notes. So I think that's why it's just your page.
yeah, I was wondering about that, but I thought if we were just making notes and that they were out there for the public to see, that could potentially be okay, but apparently it's a moot issue anyway, so.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just make a very brief comment. I think this 0145 filling a board vacancy, I don't know what the right answer is. I know I have an opinion that I do believe it's important for, I'll call it transparency, that may not be the right word, with the community, that every candidate has a level playing ground for seeking a board position. But from a practical perspective, I understand if you all of a sudden had 35 or 50 candidates, there's a manageability issue. So I don't know the answer to it tonight, but I do think as we think about it, we should also have a heightened concern that whatever the answer is, addresses concerns about fairness and accessibility and openness in that process. So just a comment as we deliberate in the next several weeks.
Thank you. All right, then we can move to some actual action items. I believe that the first board resolution that we move to is to approve an agreement with Meter Investment Management. Is there a motion?
I move.
Ms. Pettit moved. Is there a second?
I can second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. Any discussion or questions? You'll recall that this was Nick Vaccari's report on meter investments, and there will be an agreement that is entered into if this resolution passes. Mr. Hall, you have anything to add at this point?
So I am a proponent of this particular resolution. I think that from what I've understood, they're a high quality, deeply experienced firm in this relatively narrow area of the financial sector. I think it's an appropriate time for us to develop a relationship like this. And anything that puts some cash in the bank, I think is a good thing right now. Yes, we have a fair amount of cash that, largely is courtesy, as I say, of our grandkids. Okay, so we lost the lights here again. Well, okay, they're coming in and out. I think we're still transmitting, but
You are.
yeah, it looks like we're still transmitting. But in any event, I think a professional investment manager like this is appropriate to help further stabilize our financial position going forward. So enough said.
Any other questions? Any other,
Mrs. Washburn.
Just for the public's sake, you said earlier, I just wanted to reiterate that the contract will be posted for public consumption on board docs after it's approved. But on the 4th page, that's where the schedule of fees can be found. And our annual advisory fee would be 0.10% of our investment of our return. Kevin, you please correct me. And then there's a note on the bottom that says investment advisory fees are subject to a minimum fee of $5,000 per year. So that would be found on the 4th page on the last page when that is published.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you. Anything else?
You guys look like you're in a horror movie right now
I know,
from
it is pretty
the other
scary.
side of the camera.
Tis pretty scary. All right, are we ready to vote? Mr. Hawley?
Need some light. Ms. Pettit,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes. Motion carried. All right, we would then move to the next item, which is to approve contract with Hamilton County Educational Service Center for Communications Consulting. This is the item that Mr. Nevin referenced earlier. Is there a motion to approve that contract?
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Is there a second? Ms. Pettit seconded. Sorry, I'm trying to use a flashlight here and whatever. Any discussion? Mr. Nevin gave us the sort of financial particulars. This would be changing from having a 2.5-day a week communications person to having a 5-day a week. Mrs. Washburn, question.
Okay, sorry, I know you guys are trying to get out of there quickly. I'm meaty tonight. I love the idea of having Andrew 5 days a week. My question is, do we know the difference in pay between this past year and next year if we move to 5 days a week?
It was $43,000.
That's a relatively large jump then, right? Because we're going from 43, if we do 5 days, we're going to 113.
Right, it was 70 and now it's 113.
It was what? Wait, you just said 43 and then you said 70.
It was 70 and now it's 113.
Yeah, my
Does that
understanding.
not include
Oh.
him doing the website now, so we don't have the cost for that company?
Brad, do you want to take that?
There was some savings with this website. Obviously, we're contracting with another service, so we do have that to consider, but there was some savings with the website. I can get you the all-in communications cost and compare that to when we had someone in-house with our previous website, and now going from the 2.5 days to the 5 days. I can get that out to you.
Yeah, I think I did a little bit of math before, and if you made an assumption about benefit costs, and layered that, if we were to hire somebody directly and added the benefit costs into it, this didn't look like an excessive number to me versus having a full-time person once again. And my understanding is that we'll have him 5 days a week. So what he works on it is a matter of the superintendent's prioritization. So he could be working on website stuff. He could be working on press releases, other forms of communications, et cetera. The website itself is a purchased piece of hosted software. So and that's technology that we'll need, and we'll need a person to interface with it. It's my understanding. Is that fair? fair?
That's fair. The previous cost, and Kevin gave me this earlier today, the previous cost for your all-in communications director was about $127,000. So we're still significantly below that and receiving that level of service of having a full-time person.
Plus the savings from the website.
And this would give us a chance to bring in a new superintendent to, give us time to see where we want to go in the future.
Eileen, I didn't understand your question a moment ago about the website.
Oh, I was just saying, and Brad was saying it is a savings from our prior communication director. I said, and additionally, we have the savings of the website as well, since he said there was some savings with switching over too. So I do think that it's valuable. I just want to make sure that we're upfront with everybody numbers wise and the difference in numbers.
All right, anything else? All right, Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Ms. Pettit.
Yes.
Motion carried. The final motion under this section is to approve the cross-country trip. So there would be a motion to approve the cross-country trip for boys and girls cross-country to California. And I'll make that motion.
Oh, I second.
And Ms. Pettit seconded. Any questions or discussion?
I will chaperone if they, do they need a chaperone?
I think they have it covered, Eileen.
Brad, just to clarify, cost
All right,
to
well,
the
if that
district
falls through, I'm there for them.
is zero.
And this is the one you were talking about earlier, right? With the zero cost to the district and the families.
And just to be clear, we're voting on this because these children will miss 1 day of school.
Correct, and because it's an overnight trip, which is required in policy.
It's required that the board approve the trip so that there's coverage, so that there's, what do I want to say?
Liability.
Liability, so that they're going on a school trip.
And I just don't recall doing this for things like sporting events or show choir previously.
That's because we didn't go anywhere.
We,
COVID.
yeah,
Yes.
we've always done this. So it's just that, yeah, you're in
this
COVID
is normal
world.
procedure. We just haven't gone anywhere in the past year.
Oh,
Member and
great.
All right. If there's nothing else, then Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Ms. Pettit,
yes.
Dr. Swetchner.
Yeah,
Motion carried.
run fast.
All right. Now we move into treasurer resolutions, and remind me, Mr. Hawley, would you like us to make a motion to approve all those and then you'll give your report? So I would ask for a motion to approve treasurer items 7.1 through 7.9.
And actually, it'll be 7.1%. It's just because the paper is a little bit, it's on the website. So I had to add.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. 7.1 through 7.10.
Right. Eileen moved.
Eileen made that, Mrs. Washburn made that
Raise her
motion.
hand.
And is there a second?
I will.
Ms. Pettit will second? All right. Now, Mr. Hawley, do you have a report for us on those items?
Sure. Yeah, so 7.1 through 7.4 are the board minutes. So there's not a whole lot there. It's just, they're up on the website. If you have any questions about them, just let me know. 7.5 are the typical reports that we do get from the district. Just a couple things, just a point of clarification. So if you do look at the reports, what you will notice is that they are slightly different than what you've seen previously. We have recently gone on a new accounting software. So what we utilize in the district is something called, in our industry, we call it state software. State software is currently being redesigned. It's far less, it's crazy to say, but it's far less DOS based. So many of the things that we would do would be all in the mainframe system.
I remember when I was a kid trying to remember SimCity 2000 and hashtags. I mean, all kinds of things. So it looks similar to that. It's all going online now.
Excuse me, if you could get your microphone maybe closer
Or project.
or project either, yeah, just something because apparently the volume is a little low. Yep, thank you.
So we have a new system, so things look different than what you've seen previously. So if that's the case, that is why. A lot of the programs and a lot of the reports that we utilize are very similar, so we try to do our best to make it look
basically what you're used to in the past.
The second thing I just wanted to touch upon was my financial package. So my financial packet currently is the May one. I know it's the end of June, but we do this on a monthly basis. We are currently still looking at meeting the obligations that we had discussed,
or
outperforming our obligations for the 5-year forecast that we had discussed recently. And if you're also looking at what I call my budget versus actual page, I just wanted you to know that what we always look at as our budget is a 5-year forecast. So those numbers have updated because we approved a new 5-year forecast in May. So if those look slightly different, that is why. Moving on to 7.6, I think we're on here. Yeah, 7.6. So every year we are required by the state of Ohio and our local auditor to approve what's called an amended certificate. Basically what this is the budgets in the district. This is both the expenditure and the expense and revenue side of the district. So this is something that we do, and honestly, that's actually why we typically have a late June meeting. And as Bob Summers had intimated earlier, this is our closeout season. So this, in the treasurer's office, this is a very busy season as we try to close the books since our fiscal year is July through June. But again, this is just a requirement that the county auditor requires from us. 7.7, and again, a lot of this is explained in my report, but 7.7, to be able to start out the new fiscal year, we require that you we are required to approve at least a temporary appropriation for the school district. So what has been typical in the district is we approve 50% of what this current appropriation is in fiscal year 21 for fiscal year 22. Just quickly, are there any questions on that? Great. 7.8 is approve resolution for school bus purchasing program. As I mentioned in my report, and what you can see in there, it's not essentially a certain amount of buses. It's just giving the district the ability to purchase buses and go through the bidding process if we need to. So that's 7.8. 7.9 is removal of inventory. I'm sure Mrs. Connor could speak to this much more eloquently than I could, but these are basically old textbooks that we do not utilize anymore in the district. And what is not currently in the paper form, but what is online is 7.10. As many people are aware, there are many administrators, I don't like to say many, there are administrators within the district who are leaving. So we've already talked about 3 in the room currently. My payroll supervisor has also resigned and will be leaving at the end of July. We decided that the best course of action moving forward was to basically create a bridge between myself and the new treasurer. I mean, I can even tell you, I spoke with a treasurer earlier today that had discussed having to find a payroll person, and they based their decision on fit and ability to work together. So we thought it was most appropriate thing to be able to have our current operations continue. Payroll is incredibly important in the district. It impacts so many people. So this will allow the operations to continue, but then will also allow the new treasurer, whomever that person is, to be able to hire somebody in the payroll office. So they will have time to do that search. So basically, this is a 2 to 3 month stopgap. Warren County ESC is providing these services. I do want to make it very clear that this is a temporary solution.
They are helping out the district currently with their current staff, so they will be able to get payroll done, but it's not something that we would look for the future as a permanent solution. Are there any questions on that one?
Anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote on the treasure items? I can't see anybody, it's too dark in here. No, I can see everyone, it's fine.
So I just wanted to say something real fast too, just because, as Brad mentioned, this is currently my last scheduled meeting to be at. Based on the conversation we've had today, it seems like it may be the last meeting. But I just wanted to say thank you. It's funny because I can't see any of you. They can see me far better, but so I think I'm looking at you when I say this. But I just wanted to say thank you for your support. I've always appreciated every one of you. I've had tremendous amount of respect for the work that you do. I have tremendous amount of respect for Board of Education members. It is a very difficult job, and you do not get the credit that you deserve. And so thank you for being present during a very difficult time, even just outside of levies. This has been an interesting year to 2 years to be in schools with COVID and everything that has occurred. So thank you for always supporting me and always having a support for not just me, but my family. And my family says thank you as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley. And, I want to echo something that Mrs. Washburn said earlier. I know that this board has appreciated not only your talent and your skills as a treasurer, but also your values and your ethics and, the knowledge that what was happening here in the district was being done with the highest concern for everything that is ethical, never mind legal, but ethical and being done in the proper way for the district. And we really appreciate that. And we are very sorry to lose you. Franklin is gaining a fine treasure, in my opinion. So thank you very much.
So,
They're gaining the best.
so I thought I knew something about the world of finance before I came here. I did. But I've learned a whole nother side to that environment, and that's state or public school financing for Ohio. And I do believe that unless you work closely with a treasurer, you likely have no idea what actually goes into the job. The public face that you present for an hour or two, whatever. I was pressing the button, but anyway, I'm starting to run out of battery power too, which is maybe a bigger problem. Because I think when I go, the meeting goes. So we'll have to see here. In any event, Kevin, what I was trying to say is that I think few people, unless they have a chance to work with you or work with a district treasurer, have any idea of the complexities of the job, the nuances of the job, the depth, and the kinds of things that you have to know and be really good at to be effective at it. And you've taught me a lot during the course of the last year or so. I think you've done a great job. I think I think the community actually owes you a lot of appreciation. It's been a difficult period of time for sure, and some folks may not understand that comment, but I've worked with you closely enough to have that opinion that you deserve our gratitude, our thanks, and above all, our best wishes for the next phase of your life and your career. So good luck and best wishes.
After all that, it's rather a letdown to ask for a vote on treasure items 7.1 through 7.10, but I think we need to do it. So Mr. Hawley, can we vote on those?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchina?
Yes.
Yes.
I saw Mrs. Washburn say yes, so motion carried. We then move to Director of Human Resources. And I'll ask, Mr. Ogden was out of the room for a little while. Everything okay with the building, Mr. Ogden?
Yes, everything is okay. It's amazing how fast you switch back to principal mode. We have summer league and you stay in this gym, you stay in this gym, you have cleats. We don't want you walking on the floor. Where's your mom? Where's your dad? Where's your coach? There's some water there. So yeah, boom, 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 boom.
Thank
But
you. Thank you very
luckily-
much. Well, I will get a motion and then ask you if you have any additional report. I would ask for a motion to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment of certified, classified, homebound substitute, and supplemental positions for, I believe, the 2020-2021 school year and also the 2021-2022 school year, which is very hard to say. But I'd ask for a motion for that.
I move.
Ms. Pettit moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty seconded. Now, Mr. Ogden, do you have anything to add to your report?
The only thing I would add is I had no idea everybody was going to say those very kind and professional statements about me. Thank you very much. It has been an amazing 4 years, not only for me, but for my family and the family that I have gained with my work colleagues. When you get in the proverbial trenches, as we do, and you work each and every day, and I joke, I do wear a path to Mr. Hawley's office and Ms. Connor's office on a regular, and the addition of Brad was amazing, and Mr. Ames, and just the whole team. There's not enough time to thank, or I'm kind of going off cuff here, but it's been an amazing team. The principals have done an outstanding job, the entire staff. So very excited at the work we've been able to do, and Mr. Collier is going to do an amazing job. So thank you, and best of luck.
We appreciate you very much, Mr. Ogden. I just want you to know that you are the most ghostly looking on the Zoom meeting. It really is pretty ghostly, I have to say. So you win the prize.
Typical HR.
Any questions or discussion concerning the HR resolution? Seeing none, Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Ms. Pettit,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchina,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now I will say, having heard from Mr. Doherty that he's losing battery power on his computer, which is running the meeting, so we're going to try and take care of that. Those of you who are following us online or in public, we do have a proposed executive session. Possibly after that, a motion to appoint an interim treasurer who would start on August 1st, and then adjournment. So those are the items that are being considered. If you lose us because we lose power, we will certainly make sure that the minutes document what happened. We are still without power in the building. I'm not quite sure how we still have the Zoom meeting, but we apparently do. So that's what will be happening, just for our audience. And so I would be asking at this point for a motion to enter into executive session to consider the employment and compensation of a public employee or official, and to review negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of employment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Swetchnow moved. I see
Second.
Mrs. Washburn raise her hand, so Mrs. Washburn seconded. And that would be, again, executive session, after which we would come out, and there is one possible proposed item on the agenda before the adjournment. So Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Ms. Pettit,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchina,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. I have us, I can't see what time it is.
It's
I
7:54.
have us going in at 7:54.
And Kathy, if I could, I'm afraid we're going to lose this computer, as you noted, which means I think that it will look like the meeting stopped on Zoom. But if we can later on, either through this computer or another computer, we'll try to resurrect the meeting later on. So that's all I can tell you at this juncture.
All right, well, we will be leaving this meeting. Is that correct? Or are we all just going to mute?
I think we should leave the meeting.
All right, we will all leave this meeting.
Yeah,
Eileen,
I don't,
Eileen, I think we'll set up a separate meeting for you.
okay, I was going to say, I don't think I got a link for executive session in email, unless I'm mistaken.
no, you didn't. We'll work on it.
Yeah, we'll reach out to you by mobile and set something up in a couple of minutes.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
Thank you. We will be back hopefully.
She just called in. FaceTime.
We can do something.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Kevin, you're still on?
Are we best staying here because of the light?
Here, I'm going to just end the meeting. And
All right.
Yeah, we could.
It's probably going to keep me in as a guest.
I'll be looking for you.
Here, you know, I can do this.
I'll just come over there. If it
Oh, we
doesn't
can do great.
Yeah, you could come over here.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
in, I think.
you're in the trees.
Oh, wait a minute. Here, I think you just showed up. Yeah, here you just showed up.
Oh, wait.
Damn.
Okay, Kathy. And I'm waiting on Eileen, I think still, right?
Oh, Kathy, you're there now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Can somebody text Eileen and see if she's able to, or here, I'll do it.
Well, I'm a panelist.
Oh, sorry, hang on. Oh, here's Eileen.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Is that helping?
And are we still recording and broadcasting?
Oh, Lord.
Yes.
You.
All right.
Here comes Eileen.
There we go.
Everyone has to mute when they're not talking.
Yeah, just mute. I'll take care of,
Okay.
Eileen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Okay, I'll take care of
Make
this.
a good Sprint commercial.
Okay, perfect. We'll stay muted.
It's easier for me to do it here.
You don't even have to unmute. We're loud enough.
Somebody's,
I'm muted.
Just your volume, like bring your volume down.
Is that better?
yeah, your speaker is still, somebody's speaker is still up. Turn your volume all the way down. All right, I think we got it now.
People not here, so we can turn our volume up when we speak.
Don't worry about it. We're just voting one.
You don't need to have your volumes should all be down. The only one that we're going to need volume for is Eileen, and I'll take care of her on this computer.
So they're going to hear us through your computer.
They'll hear us through your individual devices. So they can hear you through your iPad.
I get it.
Michelle, are you joining separately?
I'm here.
So what Kevin is saying is unmute,
Oh, okay.
but turn your speaker all the way down.
Why did my speaker keeps going up? So
Android.
All right, are we back?
We are back and we are recording.
Okay, I have us as coming out of executive session at 9:20. It has taken us a bit of time to get everything organized for this meeting. So we are returning into general session. We have one item to consider. I would move to appoint Robert Giuffre as interim treasurer at an hourly rate beginning August 1st, 2021. Is there a second?
second.
Ms. Pettit, second. Any discussion? This is simply to cover the needs of the district as Mr. Hawley leaves us and as we continue our treasurer search. All right, Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
I'm sorry. Try again.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Motion carried. There being no other business to come before the board, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
I move.
Second.
Ms. Pettit moved and Dr. Swetchenow seconded. Not being debatable, Mr. Hawley, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn?
Eileen, if you can hear us voting on adjournment.
Yes, if it was me.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Pettit?
Yes.
Dr. Fletcher?
Yes.
Motion carried. I have us adjourned at 9:32. Thank you for all your understanding with all the technical glitches. We're still not back to full power here at the Loveland Middle School. We'll hopefully have everything work right the next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Good job, Kevin.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get